Yo, what's going on YouTube? It is your boy Omega 500. I do what Dr. J and the Women does. Like when he does like that shit to blast these videos, I just laugh at that shit. Like those are the good old days, bro. So before we start this video and tell you what it is, I had some homemade Chinese food frozen. And this fortune cookie was from Chinese, like a week ago, real Chinese food from a restaurant. So we're gonna open this shit up because I've been wanting to save a fortune cookie for you guys. I don't remember where I put my last fortune, but I don't really give a fuck. So open this goddamn thing. Oh, phone better not drop. Okay. Everything is impossible until somebody does it. That's pretty good. That's pretty good advice. This might... Look at this. Look. You see that? Now, the video we're going to check out is 5 cold cases that were solved in 2020. This is by Top 5 Unknowns. Make sure to go check him out. His video will be in the description down below. He's a good YouTuber. I need to watch more of his videos like I did when I was younger. Like my teenage years. Let's kick it, man.
The capture of the Golden State Killer, more than 20 years after he last killed, is one of the biggest cold cases to ever be solved. While there are still a number of cold cases yet to be unraveled, including the infamous Zodiac Killer, there's some comfort knowing even cold cases that have remained unsolved, despite being in the public eye, can be solved. With DNA analysis techniques getting better every year, and new witnesses coming forward even decades after crimes are committed, we can remain hopeful even the most infamous of cold cases will one day be solved. These are 5 well-known cases that were solved this year.
This should be interesting, man. Number 5.
Number 5.
Oh yeah, I didn't even have to say it. Shit.
Ronald Richard Pin was 67 years old when he went missing from his home in New South Wales, Australia in 1995. His family has spent the past 20 years searching for answers. Shortly before he went missing, Ronald had told a family member he feared for his life. As a man of both big stature and big personality, his family described him as hard to intimidate, but something appeared to be worrying him. Ronald was due in court the following month as a witness in proceedings for an apprehended violence order, similar to a restraining order or a protection order. The AVO was against Graham Thomas Sales, who had employed him as a driver. The 61-year-old would never make it to court. Ronald was last seen on October 12, 1995. A few weeks later, his Mazda van showed up, burned out and abandoned in bushland. Ronald's family suspected foul play. His bank account wasn't touched after his disappearance, and there were no sightings of him. Suspicion fell on Sales, the man who was supposed to have been testifying against in court, especially after a 24-year-old woman was shot as she walked into the court to testify in the same case. The woman, Jennifer Fergax, was injured but survived, and the shooter was arrested at the scene. Ross Alfred Shane Sales was Graham Sales' younger brother. He was found not guilty of attempted murder by reasons of insanity and placed in psychiatric care.
Not guilty!
Graham Sales was charged with Ronald's murder, as well as soliciting Jennifer Fergax's murder, but charges were quickly dropped.
What the fuck?
In 2014, Sales was arrested for a string of domestic abuse charges, as well as other crimes. He pleaded guilty.
Bruh, this reminds me of this Walker, Texas Ranger episode I saw one day, and Walker kept arresting this guy in Trevette, and he kept getting released, and Alex didn't do shit until, like, I don't remember. I need to watch that episode again. You know, that shit was crazy. Like, you know, sometimes Chuck Norris would be writing these things. I don't know who wrote this shit, but damn, this was too good.
And Graham Sales was later given a 37-year jail sentence for his domestic abuse and other crimes.
I haven't really seen how, what's her face? Not Tracy. Sydney and Gage. I never saw their first appearance. I want to see when they came to the show. I never really get to see that. And the show has been on since 1993 and it ended in 2001. So
it was only once Sales was in police custody that witnesses began to come forward with information about the earlier shooting and Ronald's disappearance. It was alleged that Sales had not only killed Ronald, but also threatened his younger brother if he didn't attack Jennifer. Sales was charged in 2015, but it wasn't until 2020 that he finally confessed to the murder. However, the Pin family still cannot bury Ronald, as his body has still not been found, despite multiple searches.
He probably buried it somewhere else.
Number 4.
That no one knows.
The family of a 27-year-old who died in 1988 came one step closer to justice when new witnesses were able to help police charge someone with his killing earlier this year. For a long time, the death of American mathematician Scott Johnson was thought to have been a tragic accident or a suicide. Scott was found at the base of a cliff near Manly's North Head in Australia on the 10th of December 1988. It was clear that he had fallen from the top, and an initial investigation deemed his death a suicide. Scott's family was satisfied with the result for a number of years, but his brother Steve Johnson became skeptical when he learned about a series of gay hate crimes in the area at the time of Scott's death. Scott was gay and moved to Australia to be with his partner.
Just for y'all know, I support gay rights. I think the gay pride last month, I didn't really do much because of COVID-19, but it was, I don't know. People hate the shit online, like when Halo did something, or PlayStation and Xbox were changing their logos to look the gay pride flag. And I'm like, bro, how is this harming you exactly? People that are gay can enjoy things like Star Wars or Marvel, DC, Fast and Furious, any of that shit, though. It don't matter. It really is not a big deal. Like, the Bible may say it's an abomination or something, but, like, not every Christian thinks that. I'm a Christian, and, like, I don't think being gay is a bad thing. I had some gay friends in my life, and I never judged them. Besides, they were my friends. Like, I probably liked one of them one time in middle school, and she told me she was gay, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." I didn't care. She was gay. I can't do nothing about it. That's her choice. I think she was in second grade with me too. I don't know. She told me an embarrassing thing, which I'm not gonna explain to y'all. I'll tell some of my close friends this story. But my mom told me what happened. I'm not gonna say it. God damn it, we're not gonna talk about that shit. I don't share stories to my viewers like Blasphemous HD does. We're gonna continue this video.
Michael Knorr, after they met while at university. They'd been living together for 4 years at the time of Scott's death. Steve pushed for another inquest into his brother's death, and in 2012, the second inquest returned an inconclusive verdict. However, another inquest in 2017 found Scott had likely fallen as a result of an act of violence from an unknown attacker. The New South Wales government issued a $1 million reward for information that may lead to conviction, with Steve matching the reward from his own pocket. A number of people were investigated by police, including the fishermen that had found Scott's body, but each were discounted. It wasn't until a witness came forward that 49-year-old Scott White was identified as a suspect, and earlier this year he was charged with the murder. Police allege that White, who was 18 in 1988, met Johnson at a hotel before heading to a popular gay spot. They walked for around 15 minutes to the spot above where Johnson's body was later found. Johnson undressed, which supposedly panicked White, and White punched him, causing Johnson to lose his balance and fall to his death.
Maybe he was gay and they had pissed off
before Scott's family can get justice. His brother believes the arrest alone was a huge breakthrough and hopes it can open doors for other similar cold cases.
I guess maybe he was gay and then they had some type of argument and that's why he killed him.
Number 3.
I don't know. They never explained.
Earlier this year, police announced they had solved the case that had remained cold for over 20 years. The body of a young woman was found by a mother walking her children to school on October 24th, 1996. Police determined she'd been beaten and stabbed to death in an alleyway in Aurora, Colorado, and left to be found. She had no ID, and her identity remained a mystery until local papers picked up on the story. After the publicity, she was identified as Tangi Sims, a 25-year-old woman who had moved to Aurora after growing up in Tennessee. Tangi was last seen alive near a nearby intersection, walking towards a freight truck with a sleeper cab without a trailer. At first, there was hope the killer could be found quickly. During the attack, the assailant had managed to cut themselves and left their own blood at the scene of the crime. However, there were no matches, and the case quickly went cold. Over the next 23 years, police continued to follow up on whatever leads came up, only to come to dead ends each time. Investigators believed the blood left by the culprit was the best chance of catching the culprit and continued to run tests as DNA analysis techniques improved. In 2019, advancements in DNA genealogy research gave investigators their first real break in the case. They were able to identify relatives of the culprit, and for the first time, they had a suspect. Wesley Backman had been 41 years old at the time of the murder. He was a truck driver who had worked in multiple locations and was known to have been in the area when Tangi was killed. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2008, but investigators continued to work to prove they had found their man. Detectives traveled across multiple states, collecting DNA samples from Backman's immediate relatives. Analysis proved they were the relatives of the man who cut himself while murdering Tangi Sims. Police hope the findings can give Tangi's family some closure and are now looking to see if they can link Backman to any other cold cases.
So did he kill himself then? I have a hard time processing things.
It wasn't new DNA technology that brought closure to the family of murdered Bonnie Woodward, but the testimony of the killer's son, who'd been used as bait. Bonnie went missing on June 25, 2010. She was last seen by coworkers as she finished her shift at a care home. She left and got into her truck outside, but was approached by a man who'd been waiting in his own car for half an hour. They spoke, and at one point, Bonnie agreed to get in a car with him, but she was never seen again. Early on, Roger Carroll was a person of interest in the case. Bonnie had 2 sons of her own and had adopted her stepdaughter, Heather, after Heather's father had died. The teenager wasn't happy in her care, and shortly before Bonnie went missing, Heather ran away from home. She ran to the Carrolls, who she knew through church, and only turned herself in on her 18th birthday, a little over a week after Bonnie went missing. Roger Carroll and his wife were charged with harboring a runaway, but neither were immediately linked to Bonnie's disappearance. However, Roger Carroll closely matched the description of the man seen outside Bonnie's place of work. His vehicle matched the one the mystery man was using, and his fingerprints were found on her truck. It seemed to be an open and shut case, even with the alibi Carroll provided that placed him out of town at the time. Police searched multiple locations Carroll was known to have visited around the time, but there were no signs of Bonnie's body. Without the body and not enough hard evidence, Carroll wasn't charged with the murder. The case lay dormant until 2018, until Roger's son came forward with new information. Nathan Carroll had been just 16 years old at the time of the murder. In 2018, he revealed to police that his father had shot Bonnie multiple times. He'd forced his son to help burn her body and personal belongings, then threw the remains into a nearby creek. Despite Roger's efforts, investigators were able to locate some of the remains after Nathan came forward and identified them as Bonnie's. Richard was found guilty of murder earlier this year.
Good. Bro, what was I gonna say? I don't know. I'll think of it later.
Number 1.
Yeah, I mean, like, 2020, it seems to be an eventful thing. Like, it's not, there's a lot of downs to this year, but there's a few up from this year, like the Clone Wars and Doom Eternal and new music albums by Eminem and DaBaby and Lil Wayne and Wiz Khalifa. I've heard of those. Drake's wasn't that good, though. But it has some good points, man. And this, people solve these cases.
Like most political
great.
assassinations, the murder of Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme has sparked numerous conspiracy theories. The murder took place at around 11:30 p.m. on February 23, 1986, in Stockholm, Sweden. Palme was walking home from the cinema with his wife when he was approached by a lone gunman. Despite the late hour, the street was still relatively busy, and more than a dozen witnesses watched the gunman shoot Palme in the back before shooting Lisbeth Palme. He then fled on foot. Both Palmes were taken to the hospital. Lisbeth Palme survived, but her husband was pronounced dead on arrival at just after midnight.
That sucks, man.
Almost immediately, the investigation ran into problems. Police did not properly secure the crime scene, and onlookers were free to wander past and potentially destroy any evidence that may have been left.
But there was a lot of witnesses.
Witness interviews were also criticized, and no clear description of the attacker could be identified, despite around 20 people trying to describe him. The lack of a clear answer led to much speculation. Palme was relatively popular. Despite being educated in America, he was an outspoken socialist who led the left-wing Social Democratic Party. His left-wing ideas also brought lots of enemies. He was accused of being a Russian spy by some, and a popular conservative magazine sold dartboards with a caricature of his face before the murder. Over the years, countless theories have been put forward. Everyone from the CIA to a former South African policeman have been accused of the crime. The mystery continued until earlier this year when police announced they knew who the assassin was. Stig Enstrom was a graphic designer who worked near the scene of Palme's assassination. He was one of the first people at the scene of the crime and claimed to have tried to resuscitate Palme, though nobody else at the crime scene could confirm this. Enstrom's family described him as an attention seeker, and he often spoke in the media about the night of the attack. His version of events seemed to change as he retold it, but it wasn't until after his suicide in 2000 that police considered him a suspect. In June of 2020, investigators confirmed Enstrom was the killer, though they admitted that the evidence they had likely wouldn't stand up in court. He was known to be a critic of Palme's politics, had weapons training, and he apparently acted as a murderer would have acted. The case is officially closed, but the lack of new evidence from any prosecution means conspiracy theories will continue.
Yeah, because if they find new evidence, they can't
Thank you
charge
guys
that person
so much for watching.
with the same crime.
If you like this video, be sure to click that.
See, like O.J. Simpson, people, he was found not guilty, and if they find new evidence, they can't charge them for the same crime. That's part of the Constitution. That's why there's conspiracies, like JFK being killed and all that shit. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I think this video is pretty long. It might not go to YouTube. If it does, then thank you, the Lord. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell off that bitch. Top 5 Unknowns did a good job covering this. And I'll see y'all later. Peace.